Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Podcast episode number, let me take a guess, 28, I believe. I could be wrong about that. Anyways, I sit here at night looking at my pups while they look at me oddly, wondering, what am I doing? One of them, oddly enough, trying to stay awake. But anyways, a little too late to be doing a podcast. I should already be getting ready for bed. But you know what happens? When your boy goes and beats Neo 1 for the second time in a row, killing the game. I'm killing the game, okay? Second time in a row. I started over now on a harder difficulty. If you don't know what that means, I'm not going to explain it to you. I'm just going to say that's a thing, and it's quite impressive. All right, look, I've had a couple of days off, and apart from projects, which I haven't really talked about, because honestly, they're just boring. They're dumb. It's a shelf. It's some coaster stuff, whatever. Stuff you guys have seen me do a million times. I've been like social media dead for a little bit. But I've taken a couple of days off of work just to try to get some of that stuff done. Honestly, not really, just because I needed a little time off. But we'll talk about the greater theme of that at a later time. But anyways, in between some of that, I've been playing Neo again. And that game sucks me in like no other. It is the only thing I do. Wait, hold on. That's incorrect. It is the only thing I do, except for working on the Z, that brings me that level of enjoyment, but also that level of just sheer anger. Because if you've ever done any of those things, it is both, it is everything. It's blood, sweat, and tears. It is fun because you've achieved something, you beat the game, you've done something on the Z, I've installed parts, but it is stress throughout the process, and it is tears because it is difficult. No joke. Like, I have nearly almost shed tears working on the Z. That is how hard it is to work on it. That car, this is a wrong tangent to get into, but there is no intro today, so here we go. That car is the equivalent of that game. That car prepared me for that game. Right? And then I got Neo 2, and your boy is just killing Neo, that's a lie. Neo 2 kicked my ass too. But I was at least better at it. Neo 1 was my introduction to this Souls-like style of game that is incredibly difficult. But anyways, I'm just subtly flexing on all y'all because I beat Neo 1 and 2. And at this point, I beat Neo 1 and 2 twice. And I beat Neo 2 on a harder difficulty, which is what I'm doing now on Neo 1 for the third playthrough. God, I'm a freaking nerd. Anyways, today I'm going to keep it simple. Because like I said, I've spent far too much time talking and playing video games and BSing around, watching One Piece, whatever. Spend too much time doing those things. So I'm going to keep this simple and clean today. I came to a realization that but when this is being released, it is August 1st. Why is that important? That's important because I like to the way my brain works is that I like to think of things like Post-its. I can keep Post-its in the back of my brain, and they'll just be there. Like a hair on a part of your body where it just keeps itching you, and you're like, what is that? What is that thing? And then you eventually find out there's like a hair that fell off of your head or something, and it's just there, and it's just itching you. I can do that with like mental Post-its. It'll just keep itching at me and then eventually I come back to it. And the thing that I'm referring to now, the thing written on that Post-it, is the 2022 goals. Some of you might be new to my podcast, and in the beginning of the year, look back like 12 podcasts or something, because, I do one podcast a week, 52 weeks in a year, we're 3/4 into the year, you do the math. You can go back and reassess some of the things. So we did some goals in the beginning of the year. And August basically signifies the final quarter of the year, right? Well, kind of. Not really. Quarter would be further down. But this is like the last third of the year. And that to me in my mind gives me a certain feeling. And that feeling, I need to mute my phone. That feeling is a feeling of angst. Thinking that there is only 4 months left in the year is a hint of angst in my drink. Why? Okay, this is why. Because if you're a person that has been diligently working on your goals, you have to now adjust for the fact that we are going into the busy holiday season. If you've got kids or family, October, Halloween is really like the ramp up. You've got Halloween activities, Halloween parties. Then you've got Thanksgiving, you got family events. Then you've got, maybe you're Jewish, you have the Jewish season at the end of December, and then you also have Christmas and New Year. Along with any sort of anniversaries and birthdays and whatever comes up in those months takes away from whatever you're doing. So let's say, this is the easy example for me. Let's say your goal is weight loss. You have to account that all of those events involve a certain amount of food. So now you have to really crunch, and you have to be far more strategic than you were the first 3 quarters of the year than you are this time. It is also anxious for me because it is the wrap up. This is the equivalent to me to when you're running that race in school and you're at the last straightaway. You've done the race and all your buddies are either behind you, in front of you, on the side of you, or whatever, and you've got that last straightaway and you're tired, you're out of breath, your lungs feel like they're like expanding and they can expand no further. Your heart is pumping extremely fast. It feels like your body is going to collapse. Your brain is telling you, hey man, maybe you should stop. You should maybe take a break. And you've got the straightaway and you've got your coach at the end of the road, that's me, telling you, come on, let's go, pick it up, let's go. And I'm holding a stopwatch to my hand. This is where we are in this phase of the year. Because I know it, because I am an extremely crazy mofo, and I know I have a crazy good discipline, and I know that during these holiday seasons, I lose a little bit of it. There's no way around it. Comfort food, family, drinks, birthday parties, New Year's, you're going to lose a little bit of it. So, what can be done? Because I'm going to keep this one this week very close and very short. What can be done? Well, I think at this point it's the final time we can really touch base and look at your list. And I've hoped that by now, some of you have made it a habit to look at your list either weekly or monthly or bi-monthly or whatever. But you should have looked at your New Year's 2022 list quite often. And as we near this end of this year, you need to probably look at it more closely. But for those of you that are on track and moving forward and continuing to run on this race and you got a good pace and you've prepared yourself and you've planned, keep doing what you're doing. The only tip I would give you is don't slow down. That last straightaway in a race, that's quite the opposite. That's when you start running. So when you start hitting those holiday seasons, whether you hit a rock in that road, you could still keep tumbling along to the finish line. You got enough momentum. For those of you that maybe aren't where you want to be, and quite frankly, if this is your first time doing this, that's going to be you, quite frankly. And that's okay. If this is your first time, don't knock yourself in the ass for this. This is a learning experience. But if that's you, then definitely look at your list and start doing some hardcore planning. What are you going to do? What can you achieve where you are right now with 4 months left and those holidays in the background? Be honest with yourself. What can you achieve? Then reassess those goals. Get rid of the ones, I hate saying this, but let's be honest. Get rid of the ones that you definitely can achieve. Remove those from the get-go. Look at the ones that you're on track for and look at the ones that you can maybe make some changes and still achieve and hit those. For the ones that you're on track for, reassess what the next 4 months look like for you. And if this needs to be on a weekly, monthly, daily basis for you, then that's what it needs to be. Some goals will have to be left behind. And what I would suggest for that is that if you still want to achieve those goals, whatever they are, definitely write them down and prepare those for the 2023 season. But once again, let's confirm or let's reiterate. For those of you that are on course, reassess how you're going to continue to run towards that finish line instead of slowing down for the next few months. Reassess either on a monthly, weekly, or some of you will have to do a daily basis. For those of you that have realized that you're not doing anything that you achieved, pick a few goals, the ones that you can achieve in that time frame, and be honest with yourself. And definitely do a weekly plan and account for those holiday seasons. Don't feel too bad if you're one of those people that have just started doing this. You're not going to be great at this, and it's going to take work. But if you want to achieve something in your lifetime, this is going to help you a tremendous amount. And before I let you guys go, a couple things that I want you guys to consider. You guys are girls. When I say that, don't take that personally. I'm referencing both genders. Sexes, whatever. We're in a weird time right now. I want you guys to remember that some of you have been with me since the beginning of the year with this. We sat down at the beginning of the year in 2022, and we started talking about goal planning. And I told you to make goals about what you wanted to do, what you wanted to achieve, to think things through, to really kind of talk about what you want to do. And some of the choices and some of the things that I suggested that you do today are things that I suggested to you then, right? So I'm going to tell you I'm going to remind you of a couple of things we talked about then as well, and things that I suggested for you to do at that point. One of which, the first thing I want you to do is to own where you are. Realize that we are in August, the 8th month of the year. And you remember who you were in that version of yourself January 1st, and how motivated and how ready you were to make changes this year. Remember who you were, because as we live our lives, we forget who we were in the past, and we always seem to think that we're never making progress. But you have to remember who you were so you can feel better about where you are and actually feel accomplished. Because otherwise, it's a spiral of just negativity. Because you never feel like you are where you should be. You should be better than you were then. The goal is always to continue to be better every single time. So I want you to think back to where that person was. But also, the other side of that coin is to own who you are now and the decisions that you made that put you where you are now. Don't get all emotional. Don't get down. Don't get negative. Just own who you are now and what you're going to do moving forward. There's no reason to get stuck in the past now. The past is literally the past. Move on. What's your next choice? What's your next step in that race? Next thing. Why? We talked about thinking about why in that initial breakdown. Why you're doing what you're doing. What is the motivation for the goals that you set? There were reasons why you should have been doing what you're doing and you didn't achieve them, and that's for you to decide. That's back to the ownership. But why did you set those goals? What was the initial reason? What was your why? That's the why question. Go back to that, because I asked you specifically back then why those goals were important to you and to remember why those things were a big deal. Another one to remind you of is we talked about challenges in a previous podcast. And we talked about how when you're brought with different difficult choices, or maybe you made bad choices, and once you've owned them, you can't just let that take over your life. You can't let it cripple you and make you feel terrible moving forward. You feel your feelings and you move on, right? We talked about that. So now I would suggest to you that you take on where you are now, post ownership, post why, and you take this on as a challenge. Remind yourself that this isn't the end. Do what you can with what you have and the time you have left, and you do the best you can, because this is still salvageable, and this is still an opportunity for you to make change, and this is still a great opportunity for you to change and improve yourself. The last thing I'll leave you with is this. And sometimes I kind of go into dark places, but I'll kind of leave you this. And this ties to the challenges podcast that we talked about before. If you're a person that was diagnosed with a terminal condition, and they told you you have 4 months to live, would you not go above and beyond to do as much as you could, to achieve as much as you could, to do as much as you could, experience and check things off of your list? I would hope so. That burden of life and planning for 20, 30, 40 years of life should be lifted off of your shoulders. And now you can truly live. My suggestion to you is to try to tap into that. Whatever that emotion, that feeling, that sense of satisfaction or liberty that gives you, you should tap into that. Because that's what I'm doing here. I'm not necessarily giving you life, because that's a terrible way of phrasing it. But what I'm doing is reminding you that you have the life. And I'm just setting goals because you and I agreed to this yearly goal. And you still have these 4 months to make these changes and to make the improvements. So I suggest that you do. And you go forward and you do as much as you can by accepting the challenge, remembering your why, and owning up to the situation, and doing the best you can for the next 4 months. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk next week.